All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, we live in a day and age where everyone thinks that they should be able to do everything. Every person believes that they should be able to speak on every topic. And that leads people to enter into contests or fields of endeavor that are not suitable for them. We all have limitations. We have to understand what those limitations are. And when we pursue what we're actually gifted in, it gives us the solace and the comfort to allow other people who are gifted in other areas to pursue those endeavors. In other words, it ceases things like envy and jealousy, frivolous things that are going to lead to our downfall if we listen to those type of energies, because envy is like a voice in your ear. It'll talk to you. It'll make you believe that you should be doing something that you shouldn't do. It will validate bad decisions that you're making that you should not be making, for the simple fact that you're more worried about usurping someone else rather than figuring out what it is that you're best at. It'll make you filled with pride and arrogance and hubris, and it will lead to your downfall. Why am I bringing all this shit up for? Mr. Nate Robinson decided that he was going to engage in a boxing match with a Disney-programmed monarch asset by the name of Jake Paul. And it was one of the biggest mistakes of his life. And you know what, brothers, at the end of the day, we're all going to make big mistakes over the course of our lives. But some mistakes are worse than others. And this is something that I'm not quite sure that Nate is ever really going to be able to live down, especially as he tries to enter into his post-NBA career pretty much for the rest of his life, unless he does something even more embarrassing than this, or has a triumph or a life victory that can make people forget this. He's pretty much going to he's going to live out the rest of his days known as the brother who got knocked the fuck out in the Mike Tyson charity boxing extravaganza. So it's very important that we know our limitations. Most of you brothers who follow boxing or the professional sports world know that it's a very common saying that you can play other sports, but you can't play boxing. To be a great boxer is not necessarily about how great a natural athlete you are. It's about your understanding and your immersing into the craft. And when I say the craft, I'm speaking about the boxing craft, the art of boxing. It's a pugilistic art, and you have to learn the nuances of it in order to get into the ring and be able to defend yourself against another person who's trained. And when I watched that fight, Nate Robinson did not come off to me as someone who was properly trained to engage in combat with another person. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Look, we got to start with the big news from the weekend. The Mike Tyson fight was amazing.
The Mike Tyson fight was very good. I give credit to Mike as well as Roy Jones for the show that they put on.
But the knockout before the Mike Tyson fight had everybody's jaws on the floor. Jake Paul knocked Nate Robinson.
I mean, that shit was crazy. Nate had no idea, no understanding on how to enter into exchange range. He didn't throw any feints. He didn't move his head at all. He came at Jake Paul in an absolute straight line with his chin in the air, throwing wild looping punches. Very unfortunate. That tells me that either he forgot whatever he was trained to do, or he wasn't trained properly, or he did not spar enough rounds to prepare himself biomechanically for what he was going to have to do in the ring and how his body was going to have to be able to perform in the ring that night.
To next week in the second round of their fight, Nate Robinson, a former NBA star, one of the great, he was a great athlete. Okay, the only guy to win the slam dunk.
You know, there's an old saying that you can't fight emotional or angry because it's going to cause you to make a lot of big mistakes.
Championship 3 times, which shows how explosive of an athlete Nate is.
Yeah, and
right, but athleticism has very little to do with your performance as a boxer. Rocky Marciano was not necessarily a great natural athlete. I do believe that he played baseball. I think that he was a catcher back in the day. But I'm not quite sure how that athletic skill set translated into his career as a great fighter, as a great boxer. He was not known as someone who was especially fast or even necessarily well coordinated. But because of his dogged determination and his willingness to immerse himself into the repetitiveness of being a great championship level fighter, he made himself a great fighter over a process of time. To me, Nate Robinson is someone who looked at Jake Paul, saw that he was a white dude, and said to himself, I'm muscle bound. I've been in a few street fights before. I've been in some brawls at the club after the game before. I've handled myself relatively well. This should be pretty easy. I'll go to the boxing gym and train, take some promotional photos for the fight in a pair of boxing trunks with some gloves on. That should be enough to scare him. and I should be able to knock him out in the first round or the second round. I think that Nate really thought that, unfortunately for him. But boxing is a different form of athleticism from any other sport, even from mixed martial arts. The average MMA fighter would never get into the ring with a professional boxer unless he was getting paid an exorbitant amount of money or he planned on becoming a pro boxer permanently for his career. That's how in awe the average MMA fighter is of a high-level boxer and that level of craft. Please understand that, in the professional boxing world, even boxers who are considered to not hit that hard hit about twice as hard as the average MMA fighter because that's all they do all day.
Paul is a YouTube star turned professional boxer. He's 23 years old. He's been taking training seriously. These guys did not like each other, and then when they stepped in the ring on Saturday night at the Staples Center, Jake Paul knocked Nate the hell out. Go sound up.
It's shaking the hims. He's trying to get Irene.
Snoop said, "Good night, Irene." Oh, Lord.
Man, the problem child proven to be a big problem for Nate Robinson.
Poor Nate. All Nate needed was a cot and a nice pillow, and maybe a Mai Tai.
Nate was on the ground for a while people tended to him, trying to make sure he was okay. I'm not going to lie. When I saw Jake land that right, there was a part of me that was like, oh my God, I hope Nate's okay. I hope he wasn't seriously injured.
It was actually a scary moment for a minute or two there, Evan. When Nate was on the ground, face first, not moving at all, I think everybody had the same feeling like, gosh, we hope this guy is okay and he's not seriously hurt.
And on top of that, the importance of getting in good sparring rounds is so that you can try to build up your punch resistance. You can't just jump into the ring against a fighter who's trained. Jake Paul is not trained like the average professional boxer, but he trains seriously. Those boxing gloves are not meant to soften the blows. They're meant to protect your hands.
Thankfully, he ended up getting up, and it seems that he is okay, but good golly, that was a great knockout. I don't care if you're a professional boxer, Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson. That was an unbelievable knockout.
It was a nice knockout against someone who had no idea how to fight or protect himself. That's what it was. Don't compare that shit to Mike Tyson or Muhammad Ali.
Here's the thing. Jake Paul only landed 8 punches in the entire fight. 3 of those punches resulted in knockdowns, including the last one, which Nate didn't get up from that one. But in the first round, he has dominated Nate from the opening bell. It was clear this was Nate's first boxing match, and it looked like a guy whose adrenaline was pumping and who had no experience to fall back on, couldn't get relaxed. And then
he looked like a guy who thought that he was going to be able to win the fight through athleticism and anger and intimidation. And that's not how the boxing game works.
Who's fought twice before just unloaded on him the entire time. It was a hell of a mismatch.
I think a lot of people are shocked by that because you look at Jake Paul and he's a YouTuber, and yeah, sure, he has some experience boxing, but Nate, he is an elite level athlete.
Right, so you know what? I would pick Nate to win if he was racing against Jake Paul in the 100-meter hurdles or the 400 meters or maybe the shot put or the long jump or the high jump. Then I would pick Nate Robinson. But when it comes to who's going to win a boxing match, I would have to have seen both of them fight, and I'd never seen Nate Robinson fight. So if I would have put money down on who was going to win prior to the fight, I would have picked Jake Paul.
Time great athlete at his size, and I think a lot of people thought that it didn't matter how much Jake Paul had boxed before. This superior athlete was just going to go and he was going to kick Jake's ass, and the exact opposite.
On top of that, Nate fought the completely wrong style of fight. He clearly had the shorter reach. He was the shorter fighter. So whatever attributes you have to accentuate those attributes. Maybe use a bob and weave style like a Joe Frazier or Mike Tyson. Don't fight so tall because you're not tall to begin with. And then on top of that, you're raising your chin. Basically, you're giving him a target to hit.
And I think everybody realized that when they saw Nate on the ground motionless, and it shocked a lot of people.
Yeah, well, dude, even a lot of Nate's former associates in the NBA turned on him after the fight, were clowning him on social media, including Swaggy P. Nick Young tweeted out that...
Right, but who really cares about Swaggy P? This dude is an undercover pansexual who was a failure as an NBA basketball player, for the most part. A big joke and a failure. Who gives a shit about what Swaggy P is saying?
No representation of the NBA family, LOL.
No, actually it was. Most of them NBA dudes can't fight. I mean, I would have to sit down here and really think about the amount of NBA players that I've seen in the 30-plus years that I've been watching the NBA who could actually fight. Jerry Stackhouse is definitely one of them. He could fight. A lot of these other guys, they can't fight for shit. But that's okay because they're not paid to fight.
Embiid tweeted out night night. Somebody posted the famous
Embiid said night night.
Simba meme, you know, from The Lion King when Mufasa died, and Simba's like, "Dad, wake up!" They died, and Nate Robinson got the Simba treatment. Things got so bad for Nate Robinson on social media that Floyd Mayweather stepped in on late Sunday night and was begging people to stop making fun of him. He actually said, "Nate, I'm proud of you, and I always will stand behind all my brothers. I will never kick my brother when he's down. It's okay for people to voice their opinions on social media, but no black athletes or black entertainers, especially black NBA players, should make a mockery out of you. We are supposed to stand up with each other through the good, bad, and ugly. I'm here to uplift you and let you know we all love you and congratulate you for just making an effort."
In other words, Floyd Mayweather, being the business mastermind that he is, knows that he can parlay this into his bout against the other Paul brother. In the same way, when Adrian Broner got his ass whooped against Marcos Maidana, Floyd Mayweather said, okay, the narrative is already built in. Marcos Maidana was able to defeat the so-called new Floyd Mayweather. Now I'm going to show how much better the old Floyd Mayweather is by defeating Marcos Maidana. So Floyd ain't slick, but I understand what he's saying here because for the most part it's relatively correct. But when the cat puts himself out there like that, he has to expect to get clowned, especially if he loses in embarrassing fashion.
My response to that, look, people are going to make fun of this. Nate knew what he was signing up for. Nate
Agreed.
That when he stepped into a boxing ring, there was a possibility that he could get knocked out, and that's what happened here.
So, but Evan, and I'm glad you said that. And the reason that he should be respected is because he didn't have to do this. He's made a lot.
Well, I wouldn't say that he should be respected because he took the fight. I would say that he showed courage, but I think that respect should be shown to those who know their limitations. There's a difference between bravery and courage and foolish courage or foolish pride. Foolish pride, that appeals to the ego. That makes someone want to do something that they shouldn't be doing because they're an attention monger. They're an attention whore. And Nate Robinson has shown himself to be an attention whore for a while now, acting as if he's going to make an NFL team. Now the boxing thing, maybe he needs to fall back, or maybe he's doing this because his money is not as good as he might want people to think it is. A lot of these NBA players and NFL players, they get past 30, they're no longer in the league, and they're struggling with money, man. People are like, what are you talking about? The guy made $55 million over the course of 8 years or 9 years. Right, but that money goes away quick. Half of it goes to Uncle Sam. The other half of it is, basically dispersed between yourself, your family, your management team, your promotional team, your agents, and all that stuff. That shit disappears fast. And then, of course, you got the hoes.
For himself, but he went in there and he put it all on the line. This is not basketball or football or baseball. When you fight, you put everything on the line. And even though he got dominated, knocked out, you name it. Once again, boxing is the ultimate sport. The ultimate sport. When it comes to the combination of the physical and the mental. I think he deserves a lot of credit for putting it all on the line in front of the world. I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
I disagree. I don't think he deserves a ton of credit for it. I think that
would you step in there and fight?
No, I don't.
No, he wouldn't, but he doesn't have to step in there and fight to say that he wouldn't give Nate Robinson credit. That's like saying someone deserves credit for getting in a car and trying to be Evel Knievel and, jumping over a large canyon for the sake of proving that he was courageous. Now, you could call that brave, or you could call that a sign of insecurity because he's looking for outside validation. I need people to see how much of a man of valor and courage I am, as opposed to just making sure that your thoughts are moderate and you take your future seriously. Clearly, Nate Robinson doesn't. He's a thrill seeker, and he got the thrill that he was looking for.
I wouldn't either. And
I know better.
A lot of people.
I know my limitations.
Ding.
And for Nate to think that his athleticism was going to transfer over into a boxing ring against the guy who's actually been training like crazy for the past couple of years. He's been training with top-level athletes. I mean, we know that. We've been reporting on Jake Paul.
Shane Mosley taught him. Yeah, a lot of top guys have trained Jake Paul.
After the fight, people were asking, what's next for Jake Paul, right? Now he's got 3 wins.
What Jake Paul claimed was going to be next was Conor McGregor, but we know by now that Conor McGregor got knocked the fuck out against Dustin Poirier. So we'll see what's actually next for Jake Paul.
As a boxer, under his belt, what's next? And man, he's calling out one of the top athletes in the world.
And I don't want to take anything away from him. It takes a lot of balls to step in the ring. Not a lot of people can do that. And this means a lot to me. It just feels good to win.
You've trained for this, and this is what you want to do for a living. This is his first fight, and even though it's only your second fight, there seemed to be a big experience difference here tonight. Did you feel that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been training my ass off, like, for the past year. I'm taking this seriously. There's a long list of opponents that I want. Conor McGregor, Dylan Dennis. I'm going to knock them both out.
That's what you want to do next?
There's my brother, there's KSI on the line.
That shows you that he has no respect for the hand skills of mixed martial artists. He's calling out, name guys, Dylan Dennis and Conor McGregor. That's why I state there's a disparity. There's a difference between elite level boxers and MMA fighters and their quote unquote striking. And he knows the difference.
Room, I want to be in this sport for a long time, and I'm in love with it, so why not?
So he wants to eventually fight Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor fought Floyd Mayweather. I don't think this is completely out of the question.
I think that a Jake Paul Conor McGregor fight is closer than a Floyd Mayweather Conor McGregor fight.
Well, it was. It was closer until Conor McGregor got knocked the fuck out. But you know how Conor is. Conor will run it back. He might defeat Poirier in the 3rd fight and then call out Jake Paul. Who the hell knows? Supposedly there was a Pacquiao versus Conor McGregor fight in the works, but now it's being brought to the forefront that Ryan Garcia is fighting Manny Pacquiao next. Why or how that fight got made, I have no idea. I'm not quite sure if Ryan Garcia knows what he's doing, because that man Manny Pacquiao will hurt you very bad. No disrespect to Ryan Garcia, he got into the ring against Luke Campbell and got knocked down. People still sleeping on Pacquiao, man. That dude will sleep you. You sleep on him.
Saying that Jake is going to win because Conor's going to work him, but I wouldn't laugh at it. People out there are making fun.
Oh my goodness, this dude is in his wiggle white boy costume. He must have a team of pet Negroes that teach him how to dress.
And saying it's never going to happen, I wouldn't speak so soon.
Here's what I would say on that, Babcock. We're going to get more into Mike Tyson in a few minutes here, but this was a huge event that was watched by millions of people. And Jake Paul, right before Mike Tyson stepped into the ring, knocked Nate Robinson out cold and raised his stock, becomes a real boxing draw. And I think there will be a good number of people that are willing to pay money to watch him fight again. I think Jake Paul became a legitimate draw on Saturday night, and it's going to be very interesting to see who he fights next. And if he can win again and build more momentum for himself, Conor McGregor's not stupid. He's a businessman. And if he knows that there will be people paying good money to watch him fight Jake Paul, that could happen. I wouldn't put it out of the question.
But anyway, that's basically it on that, brothers. Once again, we all have limitations. It's very important that we know what they are so that we can avoid unnecessary, embarrassing scenarios like what occurred with Mr. Nate Robinson. So hopefully next time he'll take the sport of boxing more seriously than he did before entering the ring against Jake Paul and prepare himself accordingly. The only way for Nate Robinson to redeem himself is to somehow get back into training seriously for boxing, get a lot of sparring rounds in, and then get back in the ring with Jake Paul and not even defeat him, but just last the whole fight and make a good showing of himself. So peace.